only black family in the white church. Pops wearing the mask and some dope shirts.
Hi everyone, it's Raul. Wanted to share with you and taking this opportunity that Letty has given me to share with you about the series at the table about race, racism, and discrimination, privilege. And wanted to start first of introducing myself. I don't think anybody have had the opportunity to really tell my story. Since I'm old, it probably will be long, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and I grew up there. It was great childhood. I had a lot of fun. I don't remember being at home during the summers. I was always outside playing or goofing around with my brothers and my friends. And that's where I found my first love, baseball, and my favorite team. It was great living there, but my parents decided that it was time to move. They wanted us to fulfill our finishing growing up in Mexico, closer to our families, to our cousins, aunts, uncles. I still had my one of my grandmas still alive. So we moved to Mexico, and there I finished high school, studied college, where I found my second love. In Tigres, the school I went to, the college I went to, and its soccer team, which is a professional soccer team, but I also played college football. I graduated and started working right away and held several positions there. And but it was one of my jobs where I met my true love, and that's Laura Ramos. We dated for 3 years, got married, and my love of my life and I, it was a dream come true for me to meet somebody so loving and caring. So we, Raul and Laura, our two oldest children, were born in Mexico. But because of work, we had the opportunity as a family to move. So we moved to Detroit, Michigan. And after living in Mexico personally for 22 years, we moved to Michigan. And there in Michigan, we lived there for 4 years. And during that time frame, our two youngest kids were born, Jorge and Carla. And in 2001, again, the job opportunity knocked on the door, and we moved here to California. And now we've been here for almost 20 years, and it's been great. I love this community and loving all the people that I encounter, but most importantly, I love serving my God and my community and be able to learn and share my faith with all of you. Hey, as we continue our conversation around race, racism, and discrimination, I'd like to share a story with you. I'm sitting here next to my car, next to the tailpipe and the muffler. And as you know, the muffler's job and the tailpipe is to get rid of all the deadly fumes that are created by the engine as it's running. So we would go to Mexico every year to visit our family. And one year, I was probably 13 or 14 years old. We had to stop at this little town in Arkansas or North Texas somewhere to get our car fixed. Something happened to it. And we pulled into this garage, we got it fixed, and we left. And after a couple miles, this whole muffler fell. And we couldn't continue, so my dad made a U-turn and headed back to that garage where we got the car fixed to tell him what happened and to have it fixed. So the garage, when we got to the garage, they did not want to take responsibility. They said that couldn't be, that they did it. And it was clear in the evidence that my dad showed them that they did do it. So the garage people called the police, and the local sheriff came by. And after a few moments of debating, I turned to my dad and said, we don't like your kind around here. You probably did this to the car to try to get money from these honest people. You should leave if you don't want any trouble. My dad was shocked, obviously. I was shocked too. That's what I remember about that story. So we had to drive a few, I don't know if it was an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to the next town to get it fixed. I remember all those fumes in my eyes, and I couldn't open my eyes because they hurt so much. But I still remember that policeman saying, "We don't like your kind around here." That'll always be in my memory. So I wanted to continue the At the Table series. You know, we spoke the last couple of weeks about race, racism, discrimination. Last week we spoke about who is our neighbor, and identifying those neighbors around us. It's everybody. You know, today I wanted to talk a little bit about discrimination and equality. And I think the best way to do that is through the story of the Bible. You know, I chose a story from Luke chapter 19, and the encounter of Jesus, but it was Zacchaeus, the tax collector's encounter with Jesus. You know, as we read in our Bible, Zacchaeus was a tax collector and rich. So tax collectors were not very well seen by the Israelites, by the Jews, because they considered them traitors, because they took their money, and that's how they became rich. So Zacchaeus was a man of position. He was probably very intelligent because he could count money, and again, smart. But the story begins that Jesus was passing through Jericho, and that's where Zacchaeus lived. And Zacchaeus, being this rich person, was intrigued about Jesus, and he wanted to see who this Jesus is. But he was short. So as the large crowds gathered to receive Jesus, and I'm imagining kind of, you know, Tracy Boulevard or Central Avenue, like a parade, and everybody on the sidewalks, and he couldn't see, you know, he's too short, so he couldn't see over everybody else. So what did he do? He climbed a tree. He climbed the sycamore tree. Now, sycamore trees are these huge trees. That was the only way he could see Jesus. And he wasn't expecting anything. He just wanted to see who this person was. But what happened next is really incredible about this story. As Jesus was passing by, Jesus saw Zacchaeus, and he called him down. He said, "Zacchaeus, come down. I'm going to have dinner at your house." Wow. You know, Zacchaeus, the traitor, the sinner, was going to receive Jesus in his home. Now, it doesn't say more about Zacchaeus and what he felt at that time when Jesus invited himself to his home. But I imagine it's like me, the traitor, the sinner, the person that nobody likes here in this town. Jesus is coming to my house. Whoa. And that's the beauty of this story, that Jesus calls on those that we may feel not worthy, and he calls on those people because he humbles himself that to call on those in most need. And what happened next is just a beautiful, beautiful ending to the story. Zacchaeus, in all his humility, understood that Jesus was giving him the opportunity to repent. And what does Zacchaeus do? He promises, "Behold, Lord, half of my goods I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will restore it fourfold. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." See, Zacchaeus didn't know what was going to happen in that encounter. And I think that's one of the things that we also have to look at, is some of us have had the privilege of looking at the world a certain way. Those people that were waiting for Jesus, that wanted to see him, wanted to receive him because they knew who he was. Zacchaeus was curious because he didn't know who Jesus was. And when Zacchaeus finally found out who Jesus was, he understood the Savior was in his house, the Messiah. And right then and there, Zacchaeus changed forever. We don't know what happened to Zacchaeus after that. But if he kept his promise, he gave everything to the poor. And if he cheated on somebody, he was going to repay it 4 times over. So just imagine, he probably was left in ruins and without any money. But I bet you that he felt such a gratitude and just a fulfillment to be able to do that for others, to see others the same way as he sees himself, you know, because he was in a position of wealth, of a privilege, and he humbled himself to be like everybody else. So think about that as we go through our daily lives. Is there somebody there that you need to reach out to? Even just to say hello. It could be a friend, a family member, or even just going over and knocking on the neighbor's door and saying, hello, neighbor. I know it's kind of awkward, but believe me, when you do that, it feels so good. Your heart is just so full of love. It's incredible, because I know.
Hey, line up! Line up! Everybody line up! We're about to race! Everybody line up! Shoulder to shoulder, take off your backpacks. Basketball, line up, we're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. It's a $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go! If you learn anything from this activity,